Hello and welcome to One Trek Mind. I'm Michael.
And I'm Raptor.
And today we're going to be discussing the 4th episode of this latest season of Lower Decks, Farewell to Farms. We begin on Kronos with Ma failing to capture a Targ while his brother Maelor teases him. We haven't seen Ma in a little while. I believe last time we saw him was the finale of the previous season with the Nick Locarno storyline. Mariner's trying to get a hold of him, but he's ignoring her every chance he can get. But then in a bar where they're playing a bunch of Klingon metal, which was pretty cool, Ma strikes out with a Klingon woman thanks to his association with Starfleet and Mariner. Again, he wants nothing to do with Mariner at all, but she wants to help him regain his captaincy, which you find out at the end of the episode why that is. Meanwhile, Boimler is trying to be less fearful as his beard fills in, so he's like really feeling all the Klingon vibes in this episode, really getting into it. They bring up a Klingon right to regain his captaincy and convince Ma to actually do it after a little bit of back and forth. When they approach the council, Barg, that's his name, right? Barg?
Yep, Barg, yeah.
He wants nothing to do with Ma because he ended up killing his brother to gain that captain's position in the first place. But Mariner's old friend Corinne is on the council, so he kind of helps out, as well as the other woman who's on the council, who I don't believe they gave a name to.
No, I don't think they were named at all.
She was funny though. I liked her, like the the human mules correctly. But yeah, Barg is very resistant to the whole idea, but because it is a Klingon right, he doesn't really have a choice, and they end up going through with it. Once we begin the trials, we start with the rite of unending pain using the lovely old pain sticks that I'm sure many Star Trek fans are familiar with. When they hit the third stage, which would pretty much just be lethal to anyone who passes through, Boimler comes up with the idea for them all to climb up on top of Maelor to discharge the electricity through them more evenly, which is how they managed to survive and pass the trial. The next challenge is to catch a giant Targ, which Ma nearly fails yet again, but his brother Maelor knows how to wrangle them quite well and does it with ease, along with Mariner and Boimler's help.
Yeah, it seems that Malar and Marg, their family, is they work that it's a farming family. It's clear that they make blood wine, which looks like, based on what we see in the opening titles, is made from Garg. We see him growing Garg, collecting it, squishing it like wine, and it seems that that's what blood wine is made from, or it's made from Targs. It's not 100% clear, but yeah,
it's got blood in it, that's for sure.
It's got blood in it.
Which everyone who seems to have blood wine seems to really enjoy it in the Star Trek universe. And I'm like, does it taste good? Like, it's made with blood, and it's, at least in more recent iterations of Star Trek, they've really amped up how much it's basically just thick blood that you were drinking. So, like, how good can it be? I'm curious.
I don't know. I mean, Cisco and that drink a lot of it in that Deep Space Nine episode, but they have to have that injection so they don't get intoxicated and fall under the table.
I mean, maybe that's why people like it so much, not because it tastes good. They're just like, it works really well. It'll get you super drunk.
After like a couple of sips, you're so drunk you don't realize it tastes like absolute shit.
Like blood. But they get to the final rite, which requires Ma to sacrifice a member of his crew, and he immediately chooses himself. This is where Corinne convinces Barg to let them talk it through, and Ma reveals that he doesn't want to serve under Barg anyways, just because there's no honor in it. He's an honorless Klingon, so he wants nothing to do with it, essentially, so it seems like this was all kind of for nothing. But the rest of the council and Mariner come up with a loophole to the rite, so Ma invokes the rite of forced conscription and defeats Barg in hand-to-hand combat, which then makes Barg a part of his crew, and he chooses him to be sacrificed instead. The only way he can get out of it at this point is to simply give him the captaincy and forget about the rite altogether, which he seemingly is about to do before Barg takes a cheap shot and stabs Ma from behind, right before Ma kills him in a brutal Klingon fashion.
Naturally.
I found that actually quite satisfying, because I, for some reason, didn't see the betrayal coming, and I was just, oh my gosh. And then I really enjoyed seeing him get his revenge. This is when Mariner finally reveals that she's been there this whole time to scan another dimensional anomaly, or space hole as they call it a few times in the episode. After scanning it with Ma's help, she finds out that the space rifts are being made by someone. So, the big reveal that this is probably the overarching plot to the whole season, like what's going on with these space rifts.
Yep, called it back in episode 1, didn't I?
You did. I thought it was just going to be a one-off kind of thing, but apparently it is the season-long story that they're going with. I'm curious to see who is creating these space rifts. I felt like the Nick Locarno stuff was a tad disappointing in terms of that reveal, so I'm hoping this one is a little more satisfying, or just explores something that we haven't seen before, or not enough of, I suppose. Like, there's a ton of alien races that they'll talk about in passing and never actually show them or have them be a part of the plot, really, so I would like to see that. But the B plot for the episode was with Mr. Miglimoo.
Dr. Miglimoo.
I have so much trouble respecting that man. It is difficult for me to call him a doctor, but he is... I guess, yeah.
He's a psychologist.
He's licensed. He earned it, I guess. I just don't like him. But he's nervous because there are two Cloacan dignitaries that are on their way. Once they arrive, they're extremely snooty and uptight and all about themselves, and immediately make me dislike them even more than I dislike... I almost said Mr. again, Dr. Miglimoo.
Yes, it turns out that the Cloacans invented warp drive with the sole purpose of going out into the galaxy and finding good food.
Strange new meals, which I loved that line. That was really good.
Something I can get behind. But yes, the two dignitaries, they reminded me of, what was his name? He used to be on British TV. Lawrence Llewellyn Bowen. Just so uptight and pretentious and poncy to the point of just wanting to hit them with a chair.
Which is exactly what they are like here. The Cloacans become deeply offended by the bland food that is served to them and actually slap Miglimoo when it's revealed he replicated the meal.
That's got to be a Gordon Ramsay thing. It's got to be a Gordon
Ramsay is not that uptight and shitty to other people. He might yell a lot, but they were not like...
He is about frozen food, though, isn't he? So I feel like the whole "this is replicated" is kind of similar to, like, serving frozen food to Gordon Ramsay.
Well, I wouldn't say it's just him. Like, the replicator is sort of like their equivalent to a microwave for us. So it's like, even if you had someone's, like, parents over for dinner... You're like, oh yeah, I microwave this. They'd be like, what? You're supposed to cook these things from scratch. To make up for it, Miglimoo makes a hogfish dish, which looked absolutely disgusting, but apparently tastes really good to Cloacans at least. But they say that it is also super bland, despite being covered in all these spices and various different foods. And they immediately have him arrested to be taken to Flavor Jail. At Flavor Jail, Miglimoo is vindicated when Freeman, Tendi, and Rutherford swap out a tray of oysters with manure that this simply looks like oysters. The dignitaries say, ooh, it's so delicious. While Miglimoo's like, this tastes like shit. And it's revealed that they have simply lost their ability to taste anything and eventually agree to get some counseling with Dr. Miglimoo to try and regain some semblance of what they used to have. But that's pretty much it for the episode. It was, I would say, not a standard one, just a very lighthearted one, despite some slightly heavier topics along the Klingon side of things.
I mean, this was Lower Decks doing a Klingon episode. All good Star Trek shows have their, Klingon episodes. The Next Generation, I would argue, profited quite a lot from their Klingon-centric episodes. They're probably among the best of the show. But yeah, this one was full of a lot of fun Klingon references. Some of them are really obscure as well. There is a scene with two Klingon bikers that almost collide and they shout at each other, "Experience beige." And that's actually a reference, I think, to a very old videotape board game, Star Trek Next Generation board game, that had the actor who plays Gowron capturing the Enterprise. And it was one of those where you put the video into the tape player and you play the video as you're playing the board game. He's well known. There's a well-known scene in that video of him doing the whole eye thing and saying to the players, like, experience, bish, quite a lot. So I'm sure that is a reference to that very old board game. I caught the reference immediately. I was like, I got that.
I did not know what it was being referenced. I just found it to be a very funny interaction between the two Klingons.
There are so many good little one-liners, like, was it Mariner what crawled up her boo window and died? Yeah. When she was referring to the Klingon woman who dumped him at the bar.
I mean, in general, I feel like I'm a little bored with Klingon stuff at this point, just because it has been 50, 60 years of Star Trek, and Klingons have been a major part of it for the entirety of it. Like, every single show has at least a few moments where you're very heavily focused on something Klingon. In some cases, quite a lot. Like, DS9 had a lot of Klingon episodes, and Next Gen had a pretty decent amount of them. Voyager didn't have too many.
Had the Day of Honor episode where B'Elanna kills herself to go to Grethor and free her mother's soul from Grethor. But that's about it.
I mean, in general, B'Elanna's the only major Klingon character there, and they basically just sort of recycle the same storyline of her coming to terms with being Klingon and human, like, over and over. On that show. I mean, Discovery also had, like, a lot of Klingon stuff, unfortunately. They didn't do it in a great way.
Tried to retcon and rewrite so that they could have the Klingons that they wanted. Less said about that, the better. Yeah, I kind of agree with you that it would be nice if Star Trek spent a little bit of time exploring a different culture. I think one of the sort of inherent problems is that most of the other sort of big civilizations, the Cardassians, the Romulans, they're kind of more on the villain side of the spectrum.
True.
DS9 did give us quite a lot of Ferengi. I mean, DS9 treated the Ferengi in the same way Next Generation used the Klingons. Like, it was basically everything about Ferengi culture was established in DS9.
And it was definitely a lot better take on the Ferengi than what was done in Next Gen. But again, I feel like there are other races that I would like to get into a little bit more. Like, I feel like Enterprise kind of delved into the Andorians a little bit, but there's so much more that we could go into with the Andorians. I would love to see an episode that focuses on them a little bit more. Just in general, I feel like we've done Klingons and Vulcans to death, so I would be fine with shelving them for just a little bit, but that doesn't mean I don't like the Klingon or Vulcan episodes that are out there. Like, this one was pretty good. I enjoyed the various rites that they had to go through, because again, as Boimler said, it was Klingon as hell. Like, they really nailed it. They did not screw it up, I feel like.
I want that on a t-shirt now.
What, this is going to be Klingon as hell?
Yeah, or just Klingon as hell on it.
That would be a good one. And the Miggly Moose storyline, like, it was cute, but again, it was with such insufferable characters, and I already don't like Miggly Moose. I was kind of just like, okay. I'm glad this is a pretty short storyline in the episode. Like, they definitely put more focus on the Klingon stuff, even though I found it somewhat enjoyable. Again, you're dealing with, like, insanely insufferable characters, which thankfully the episodes of this show are not too long. Otherwise, I don't know if I would have been able to like get through it, because they just drove me crazy.
The next this coming week's episode looks interesting. They've shown some screenshots of some Enterprise related things, like them in the decon chamber and some Enterprise uniforms. So I'm kind of looking forward to an episode maybe looking at Enterprise, because
it's about damn time that show stops getting the shaft.
Yeah, I feel Enterprise is unfairly given the shaft, especially when being referenced. Discovery turning Mr. Glasses guy into Daniels.
I mean, I thought that was a pretty decent reveal. I was like, oh, that makes sense.
I did, but it did also sting a little bit of, like, I'm not 100% convinced that he was always supposed to be Daniels. I feel like...
Probably not. In most cases with reveals like that, usually they come up with it a little after the fact.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to an Enterprise-heavy episode. And yeah, I mostly agree. It was a fun filler episode. Not much else really to say about it.
I do feel like, since this is the final season, it does annoy me a little bit that this was basically just a filler episode, because I'm like, we don't really have time for filler. This is the last go around for these characters. I would prefer this overall season to be a little more serialized, just because, again, I want the reveal for whatever's causing the space rifts to be decent and have some time to breathe, and this is the very last attempt at a story that they're gonna get, so I would like it to be given the time that it deserves. So a filler episode feels a little out of place to me, but again, it is Lower Decks, where they're very well known for their filler episodes. But that is about it from us. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe. All those definitely help us out a lot to grow the channel. I hope you enjoyed the video, and that is goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.